So let me get Mr. Gogia in with us. Samir ji, when GST was implemented, and for a lot of people operating today have forgotten the absolute nightmare of running a intranational business where every state had a different rate of taxation and different rate of this and different rate of that. But when GST was implemented, there were a lot of issues that the website is not working, the software is not working, the algorithm is not working, the refunds and the adjustments are coming late. Have we pretty much solved those issues?
Yes, I think if you see in past last 2-3 years, there has been not major changes, and GST Council now has streamlined most of the rate. And
forget the rates, just on operation. That do you have clients and people yourself who are saying, okay, my GST system is working smoothly and my compliance has become a lot easier? Has that happened?
Compliance from assessee definitely yes has become easier, but definitely from the tax side where they are waiting for the refunds, I think that still need to be looked into. There are a lot of things that need to be taken care, because ultimately what is happening is the cash flow issues for the private for the assessees. What is happening is when they are getting a refund which is delayed, their entire cash flow gets stuck and they need to pay interest to do a borrowing to manage their supply chain. So I think a lot of work need to be done at that side. But more or less, pretty less on the compliance side, we have more tools and the technology now available. The things are on track.
Okay, so let me get Jayjeet on this. Jayjeet, once we look back in our old age at our times, okay, certainly we will look back at GST implementation pan-India as one of the iconic reforms that we were there to witness as it was being announced in Parliament, I think, if I remember correctly, in the middle of the night. Okay. Has it lived up to the potential of unleashing ease of doing business?
Well, to some extent, clearly life is better than what it was earlier. In fact, if you look at just hard statistics of how much time it takes to transport goods from Delhi to Chennai, because of GST coming in, the paperwork reducing, it has gone up, it's gone down by 1/3. And there are many other statistics that we can rely on. Also, if you can see that the total tax collections has been going up. However, having said that, this is not the time to rest on our laurels, because still the tax structure is quite complex. We still have 5% duty on almonds and 12% on cashews and so on and so forth. So the multitude of rates that we have, which is 0%, 5%, 12%, 18%, and then 24%, is quite is still very, very complex for many businesses. And netting them off against SGST versus CGST, and you can't net off one SGST against CGST and so on and so forth, it starts becoming still very, very complex. There is no reason why we can't remove this complexity. And I think urgent steps needs to be taken to further reduce this complexity, reduce the number of tax slabs, and make it easier to net off the input tax credits against the collections that we are having. So a lot more work needs to be done, although it's much better than what it used to be.
So at what point of time, Jayjeet, do we feel that yes, that one single reform is contributing a percentage, 2% to India's GDP growth? Has that already kicked in? Will it kick in one day?
No, I strongly believe that it has already kicked in. I strongly believe that the growth that we are seeing on a sustained basis, there is a significant role of GST to play in that role. But my point is that we can do more, and it's within our control. It's not an extraneous factor. It's not war happening somewhere else that we can't do much about. It is about a few policy tweaks. It's about rationalizing the tax slabs further, and that should be done. It's it's unfair if it's not getting done at a faster rate.
Okay. The GST structure, ladies and gentlemen, is now outside the budget that is going to be discussed today. It's part of a GST council which takes all decisions unanimously, which means that every finance minister of every state has to agree on everything. They do take decisions. The GST council meetings do happen. They do take substantive decisions, but on things like fuel and all other matters, don't expect any movement anytime soon. Okay, then let me touch upon one other and let me discuss it in a very practical way. Pathikrit, if you can hear us. Pathikrit, are you an investor in the stock markets which are currently up by 230 points this morning?
Rishabh, thank you. Yeah, I do invest in the mutual funds. and I'm pretty optimistic about India's, manufacturing sector and the overall resilience of the Indian economy. And I still reiterate, I still believe that in this budget also there will be a lot of impetus which will be given to the production-linked incentive scheme to ensure that the supply chain aspect of it and making India a critical component of the global supply chain hub, that India wants to make India, the government wants to make India as. I think that aspect will continue. I am also very optimistic that in the realm of deep tech research and startups, a lot of impetus will be given. The momentum will continue. There was an announcement of 1 lakh crore in that budget that was announced in February for research in deep tech. I think that will be streamlined this time. I'm also very optimistic about something which should be seeing the light this time, as you were mentioning that time in the previous question when there was an audio issue. Rishabh, I think we have a problem of sheer disconnect between what the industry wants in terms of requirement from freshers coming out and what the industry teaches.
Why?
In most of the occasions, we find that they have to first unlearn what they have learned in universities before they can be made useful for the industry. So that disconnect can be sorted out to a great extent by having, once you have a Mudra loan scheme, I believe you should have Mudra skill development, Mudra entrepreneurship institutes in every district and every subdivision. That is very important. I'm also optimistic about one critical area. Defense today, it's not just about the requirement of securing the country, but it's a very, very critical aspect of the economy. Defense industrial complex in the West have contributed enormously to the economies of those respective countries. They may have become very powerful, too powerful, but I think that Atmanirbhar Bharat is opening up a huge opportunity for India's startups and industry to become part of that. So overall, I'm very optimistic about India's industrial future.
So let me pick that thought, okay? Because Mr. Gogia is here with us now. Deloitte, to a large measure, ladies and gentlemen, is doing accountancy, is doing a bit of consultancy. So, Mr. Gogia, are you seeing emerging clients in defense, in aerospace, in the space sector, in AI, in computing? Are you seeing new industries which would have not even been a part of conversation for you guys in your internal team meetings 5 years ago, now saying, hi, hang on, we need specialists, so people are asking us to come and audit their books or do their accounts, and they are from a completely new sector?
Yes, definitely. I think this has been a major trend, and if you talk about AI and other tools, definitely we have also started using that tools in our audit practices. So we have already started using, and on the client side, if you see, there has been new entrants who are using these types of technologies, and if you look at most of the startups now, they are looking at various AI.
No, but I'm talking about is crypto a sector? Now you see what's happened with WazirX. It's a major dent, some 1,800-1,900 crores. It's going to be it's a hack that's happened. There's so many coins, so many others have come up. It's an industry that did not exist 5-6 years ago, and suddenly it's a multi-thousand crore industry which also needs accounting services and audit services and consultancy services. Are you seeing these guys emerging for the first time? I had bought some crypto and had to file my taxes last year, and it was a heck of an exercise for my accountant to figure out the statements that I was getting from one of these crypto platforms. It took several weeks of me having to sit down and do all the mathematics, because the crypto taxation is really complicated. Guys, it's so complicated. I would not make it an investment advice, because if you run an overall loss, you still pay taxes. But are we seeing, are these examples of new industry that didn't exist 5 years ago?
Definitely. If you talk about crypto, I think government did clarify about the digital asset and the taxation. If you see the newer industry, you have major play games, bets games, all these games also coming up.
Become huge.
Yeah,
and multi-thousand crore companies, and and some of them are literally fly-by-night operators. They're just popping out of nowhere, and then they are all over your TV screens.
And you believe me, actually they are minting a lot of profits. And what government is trying to put on is they are trying to put on the highest tax rates on these services, where they are making huge profits. And we are in the process of actually stabilizing how that need to be taxed, but government making sure that these luxury and these games, these are taxed at the highest rate. So the efforts have already been there, and if you see, we were talking about the education and people getting equipped. The education system also need to move into that direction where the youth need to be equipped with how to manage and how to interpret blockchain and AI things, where the education system currently is actually not in par with what's happening.
How do we do it? It's the Nobel Prize is not knowing what to do. The Nobel Prize is knowing how to do it. Everybody wants 10% GDP growth. The big question for PM Modi and Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is how to do it. So Jayjeet, let me take that thought for you. I asked the Finance Minister this just a few weeks ago, right before the elections. Are we closer to 10% GDP growth? She said, I'm confident, but couldn't make a commitment. Obviously, she can't make a commitment that yes, it will happen tomorrow, it will happen next year. Are we closer? Is it possible?
I think fundamentally, as knowing a bit of economics, I don't think we should be fixated on the 10% growth, because that doesn't necessarily translate into jobs or economic stability. When we grow at that breakneck pace, it starts leading us to a situation where, as an economy, we may start breaking down. So the first few years, we may have 10% growth, and subsequently we'll have a massive amount of inflation, instability, and so on and so forth. So I think an 8.5% around that is a more sustainable growth, as long as we do it on a continuous basis in a secular manner, while ensuring there is jobs happening, while ensuring there is social stability.
So Jayjeet, where? Because the politics of the last 3 months has told you that in certain areas of the country, the aspiration is still government job.
I think it ties back to what you started off with, Rishabh, is that there is a huge mismatch between human skills and the job requirement. We have never been in the asking for too many good candidates whenever we are hiring, and that's a common experience across any industry, be it media and broadcasting, be it information technology, or anything that we talk about. And that's a strange situation because we keep hearing that there aren't any jobs, and we do see that people are unemployed, but we also do see that there are a large number of jobs and there aren't enough people to be hired. I think the blame squarely falls on our education system. For years and decades, we have been screaming that the education sector has to be aligned and relevant topics needs to be taught, and more realistic issues that needs to be brought into the education system. If somebody has finished BA in economics and doesn't know the GDP of the country, and trust me, the same thing has happened with me umpteen number of times with candidates that I speak to, that's a tragedy that's happening. And we're looking for a career in, let's say, economics or technology. It's a shame. In fact, I recently read an article blaming the fact that many people in India are going for STEM education, which is why they're jobless. That's not true at all. If you're trying to hire STEM educated folks, you will pretty much see that they don't have the skills to be educated, nor do they have the inclination or the aptitude to be in that area. And I think that's a long overhaul that we need to do, because the most precious resource that we have in this country is the human resource. And if you're not cutting them, polishing them, shining them up, and just throwing them into the river, that's a shame. And so we'll continuously have
it is the biggest onion to unravel, and these are realizations that have hit us very recently. So let me get Patikrit on this. Patikrit, what did we learn, or at least what did I learn from Ukraine? Because it's a war that somebody else is fighting for their own geopolitical concerns that we are not necessarily stakeholders in. I learned from Ukraine that there are thousands of Indians studying in the Ukraine, many of them trying to become doctors in the Ukraine, of all places. Now, Rishabh, it's difficult. If you think of memory tells you that Ukraine, what comes to mind? Ukraine, for me, it comes to mind, okay, Chernobyl comes to mind, okay, big disaster that happened. The Soviet Union comes to mind. I remember the Orange Revolution of Viktor Yushchenko that happened when I was in college. That comes to mind. Maybe NATO, maybe food and agriculture comes to mind. Ukraine is a grain basket. I never thought there will be tens of thousands of students from India who need to be rescued because they are studying. And why they are studying there? because they don't have the opportunity here. Something has gone wrong. This is not Yale or Harvard or Oxford that is aspirational to go there. This is desperation.
Rishabh, a very important question you have asked, and not just Ukraine. I mean, there's a problem going on in Bangladesh. Suddenly, we realize there's a lot of students going to have.
There are students going to Pakistan to study. Now you and I can argue why they go to Pakistan to study, but there are.
Yes, and you are absolutely right. I think the problem are twofold. Number one, there is this huge obsession that I have to have an MBBS, even if it's from a country which has no relevance, and I may not get recognized in India. And the second is this, that even if I get an opportunity to become a first grade paramedic, even if I get an opportunity to get a first grade veterinary doctor, I would still not be that, but I'll still get an MBBS. So a lot has to do, Rishabh, from the way the schooling happens in this country and what is ingrained in the mind as to what is a viable career. I mean, when I was growing up, I was almost like an outlier because I had interest in journalism, and I think the parameter was simple. Either you have to be an engineer or a doctor, nothing else. If you are not good in mathematics, you are a nobody. Even if you are good in economics or history, you are a second grade person. So that obsession from the schooling, even today, Rishabh, you go to any top class school, what is the obsession, what is the parameter that they are told to follow? Eventually, you are asked that after your class 10, you must enter into some of these coaching institutes, which eventually will prepare you for all this schooling, for all this entrance exam.
Yeah, so again, we learned through NEET examination the crisis that's happened. What are the lessons that, I have to sit and observe these things on a daily basis, and it's the privilege that I get to absorb these things. My lesson is, you know what? Become a coach, become a tutor. That's where the money is. Okay, open a shop in Kota. You can make millions. Teaching people. So let me get General Dwivedi into this conversation because it is a relevant one. General Dwivedi, we've seen so much controversy for so long. It's become such a politically vexatious issue before, during and after the elections. And it is linked to employment. That there are young people, sometimes second and third generation, mostly coming in from villages in this country, small towns, who think of a career not as the officer cadre, but as volunteers, people who sign up to serve on the front line as Jawans and NCOs in the army. And they want a job that is giving them certainty of employment for till their mid-30s at least. And then they want a pension. They're not understanding this concept of 4 years, 5 years, and you give me a lump sum. Why?
Well, first and foremost, I think, Rishabh, I need to de-link the armed forces, the way armed forces work and the way the civil work, because I've seen both the dimensions. First and foremost, when we talk armed forces, please understand, and the viewers too, it's not an employment. Guys like me at the age of 11 wanted to join the army. We went to Senate school, went to NDA and trained for 7-8 years to become officers, and same is the, I think, analogy for the men. That they come to the armed forces with a sense of pride. I am from that regiment, and you see, people come with a sense of pride. They don't come for employment. No, that is what we need to understand, and this is what I have repeatedly brought out in my writings also, that we don't take armed forces and employment. Please understand, we need to de-link it. But secondly, the other side of it, that after all, everyone is not into the armed forces. What happens in the larger young people, because 65% of population is below 35. Now you brought out about the jobs of the government. When I am teaching in IIMs and top of the line institute, no one is going in for government jobs there, because they are all going for private jobs. Who are the people who are going for government jobs? Now these are the people from tier 3, tier 4 institutes, because they cannot compete for the top of the jobs or top of the line, placements. So they go for these jobs which are of the government nature, because they provide stability, because in corporate it's very I would say transactional. Either you perform or you're out. I am sure same must be there.
Yeah, but what's wrong with that? But I mean, you can perform, okay, and you can hold on to a healthy job. You can build a career. You can do it the old-fashioned way of hard work and get there. So what is still this aspiration that we've seen in this election, that government jobs is a big deal? People really want a government job. Why?
Yes, that's true, because as far as the corporate is concerned, there is a lot of uncertainty. because if you don't perform, you're out. And in life, I think everyone requires certain amount of stability, because you can't be told that next day you may be here, you may not be here. But the point, two important points which I want to make, that we are not producing employable young people. Young people have qualification, but they are not employable, because for the simple reason that mismatch between what the institution are producing and what the industry wants, point number one. Secondly, we need to encourage a lot of startups, because that's where the future lies. Future doesn't lie in the government jobs. They're very limited. They're going to shrink. Future lies in the corporate, future lies in startups. And unfortunately, I don't paint a very optimistic picture, because still there are so many gridlocks. There's a lot of that tapeism to start anything. I think we need to open out this private sector, make it more conducive, bring in an ecosystem that is more favorable.
Okay, I don't want to be all gloom and doom, because we are. Okay, a lot of things are different. You can see India is physically changing around you, but then there remains a premise. So let me get Mr. Gogia. And Mr. Gogia, I'm sorry, I'm going off topic for a second. Okay, but we are all human beings, and we also have to think about our careers and appraisals and promotions, and how do we look after our families, and the car we want to buy and the house we want to buy going ahead, and we have to work hard for it. I've had to work hard for it. You've had to work hard for it. So there, when the Indian School of Business, ISB, was founded, that was it supposed to be, right? That the industry is going to come and they're going to adopt these courses, and they're going to work in tandem, and they're going to set up a university which has become a very premier university. It's as famous as I am now, especially if you're applying for further education or jobs in India and abroad. We have doubled the number of IIMs, doubled the number of AIMs, doubled the number of IITs, but it's nowhere near enough. So what do we do?
I think what I have also practically experiencing. My son just graduated, he just completed his 12th. So I was exploring, yeah, I was just exploring. And what they have tried to do is, if you see, I'll touch upon on the two sides. One, on the government initiative, they have started certain virtual in rural areas, so that people bring into that level. Also, if you talk about ISB as well as IIMs, now they are coming up, if they are not able to create campuses, they are coming up with some online courses. And now to make an online course effective, they have also started classes which are monitored through AI tools on the attendance, as well as for the exams they want the physical presence. So I think this is a positive path where more and more people.
Okay, but we saw the massive boom, for obvious reasons, COVID reasons, of online classes, of virtual education. And as we speak, we are watching the bust. The biggest of all the multi-billion-dollar companies is not even being able to pay salaries and is in trouble. The founder himself is in trouble, after whom the company is named. So we saw the boom here. There's another, in Unacademy is trying a different kind of academy, they say, that where we are focusing on the job that you get at the end of it and the training for the job account. Is that innovation to be left to the private sector? Can the private sector do the innovation at the scale that is required to do this skill set addition that government universities are just not being able to do?
Yes, I think the only way, I think private can do it much faster and better way than because of the government, because we see it takes time. The recent innovation, what I been through an IIM course, which they just started for undergraduate this year. The good thing, what I liked about it, the attendance. If you see the normal online courses which students went through during COVID from the school, the attendance or the presence actually were not able. The schools were not equipped, or they were not able to capture if the students is playing game or attending classes. Now with AI tool being done with their presence, you are able to track his activity, what all he is doing while studying. So you can have a attendance monitored through AI. And also on the exams, where you were not able to track that how well he has prepared.
But what is, we have a new education policy, ladies and gentlemen. If you read the policy, it's a damn good policy. It makes a lot of sense. The proof of the pudding, of course, is in the eating. Jaijit, we are getting it right increasingly on paper, even in the budget allocations. But we don't seem to know where to spend the money and how to spend it and how quickly to spend it. There are fundamental problems here. What can be done actually to change them that is beyond the incremental?
Absolutely. I think problems is well known. We have been repeating the problems. The issue is how do we actually implement it and convert the rupees into actual outcomes. Clearly, if we look at, coming back to the issue of education for that matter, why have we tied up the education sector for 75 years is beyond anyone's understanding. Higher education particularly should be freed up. And instead of the government investing into higher education and saying that, the government has done so much by investing into higher education, just leave it for the private sector. Call a spade a spade. It's a money-making initiative. All the universities in the world have got multi-billion-dollar chests. If you look at Stanford, they've got a $30 billion chest that they have. These are money-making initiatives because they generate tremendous amount of value, and therefore, liberalization in multiple areas in fundamental areas such as education is needed so that we quickly churn out the kind of skills that we need, which will power the economy.
But okay, but Jayajit, we've seen that, right? Everybody who's got 20 bigas in Punjab then starts thinking that, good revenue sources, let me open a university, because the demand is so great that the kids are so desperate, their parents are so desperate. I mean, honestly, I've been through that. Okay, I can imagine what my parents would have gone through because until you get that seat in Delhi University, it is 10:1. There's one seat for every 10 applicants. It's a tough one, no matter how many marks you scored or not scored. So what can be done? What can actually be done?
So, Rishabh, just taking that example, most of our kids are bright kids, right? They're smart kids. But are they studying the right things, and are they allowed to? Is the ecosystem conducive? If we are having protests saying we need to have the right to cheat, and then saying that we will be having good education, and that kids are deprived from opportunities, that's an unfair statement. I mean, there is obviously truth on both sides. There are kids who are actually deprived of opportunities, but then there are a whole bunch of kids who join university, they don't attend any classes, and they expect that there'll be a job at the end of the 3 or 4 years that they study, which cannot happen because it's not. The process is to actually turn a human into a productive human in certain areas, and if they haven't gone through that process by just getting a piece of paper which says a degree, obviously we all know that's not going to add to the economy of this country.
I want to address one last thing, okay, before we jump back in. And Patikrit, I personally think, and this is my personal opinion here, I personally think the biggest issue that we are also facing is that we are somehow, I don't know how it's happening, whether it's happening on Instagram or it's happening on WhatsApp University, that our kids are being told that there is a hack to life. And then I have to tell them, no, you have to work hard. I've had to work. I come from privilege. I live in a national capital. I went to one of the best schools. I had the chance to go to one of the best universities. I had the privilege of having a foreign education. I've done everything possible, but I had to work 18, 20 hours a day to make it to where I am. Otherwise, it wouldn't have happened, period. What do we do about that kind of social trend?
Rishabh, thank you for raising this issue. I'll give you a personal life experience. I know a 10th fail guy setting up a 50 lakh business annually. And I know another person, a postgraduate, still looking for a job for the last 7 years. The problem is the inhibitions that we have created. The problem is the shortcuts that we have told that you can have instant, success. That is where I reiterate, it has to start from the schools. Rishabh, we teach about success stories. We don't tell them how to deal with failures. We don't tell them how to deal with difficult times and how to evolve with time to actually reach that era of pinnacle of success. It's not a one-day story. The problem is everybody wants success like a 2-minute instant noodle. And again, this starts from the schooling. It starts from the house itself, from the home itself. That is where the problem is. I see, an ocean of students every morning, every afternoon going to these coaching institutes in the same uniform. What have they been told? That either you get into the IITs or you're a failure in life. I know students, Rishabh, who don't want to come out and get into the workshop. They don't want to come out of that AC room. Are our universities creating more innovations rather than skills? And you talk about jobs, Rishabh, there's no scarcity of livelihoods in this country of 140 crore people. But we have kept aside entrepreneurship. If you start a business of your own, then the first question the neighbors ask is, oh, you must have not got a job. That's why you start a business of your own. That mentality, societal mentality has to change from home.
I would like to think it's changing, but it hasn't changed. And the reason this conversation is relevant is because the demographic dividend, because never before in the history of humanity, I say this often, have there been so many young people in one place at one time. It's never happened. This is not some artifice, this is not some statistic, this is us. I have just crossed the threshold of the age of 35, okay? So I'm now on the other side of that statistic. But I know what it feels like, that there is a sheer weight of 600 million jobs that are going to be required in the next 10 years. Where are they going to come from? General Dwivedi, let me now take on a different tangent. As we're watching Nirmala Sitharaman with the MOS Finance, they are doing their motions. There's a formality to be completed. As you all know, you have to go to cabinet and take their approval. Then you have to go meet president and present the budget. Then you go to parliament and then start your speech, which is going to start in about an hour's time in the Lok Sabha. General Dwivedi, so let's take on the issue of fundamental change. We did a telecast yesterday and I built a themology of audacity. Okay? Can India today have the audacity to say that we will no longer have to buy weaponry and therefore spend money to buy weaponry just to defend ourselves from abroad? Is that possible for you and I to see it?
Well, Rishabh, I just did a research paper on Atmanirbharta, the reality check. So I can give you very clear-cut statistics on this. First and foremost, yes, our dependence has come down from 70% to 30%, but we still are dependent 30% on the imports. Now, there are three basic fundamental issues. Firstly, if you want to become self-reliant in defense, you have to have a very strong industrial base. And having spent good deal of time in China, how did they become self-reliant in defense? Because you have to make the whole nation industrial base strong. You have to create an ecosystem. Today, our big problem is technology. You see, our LCA Mark 1A is stuck because we are not getting the F404 engines from the US. Now the whole production line is stopped. We don't produce turbines for our ships, and so on and so forth. So my point is that it's very noble. In fact, I would say imperative to become self-reliant in defense. But it has to be a gradual process. It cannot happen overnight. To that extent, I recommended three things. Firstly, expand your industrial base. Secondly, make it easier for the procedures like transfer of technology. Today, we are stuck with the F414 engine. Only 80% is coming. And thirdly, we need to train manpower because after all, how can the technology be handled? We have to produce skilled manpower.
Okay.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.